They say when death comes, he takes everything. But when he came for me, he paused. He looked at me, not with coldness, but with something that felt almost like love. You weren't supposed to die yet, he whispered, his voice breaking the silence of my fading breath. And in that moment, I realized. Death wasn't cruel. Time was. Time had watched me suffer, watched me lose everything I loved, and still kept going. The Reaper didn't come to end me. He came to save what little was left of me. And when his hand touched mine, the pain didn't end, it transformed. I saw every memory, every face, every heartbeat I ever loved, glowing like stars before they vanished into peace. Maybe death isn't the end. Maybe it's time keeping its final promise.
No one expects death to knock politely, but that's exactly what he did. 3 soft knocks. Slow, measured, almost gentle. Mara lay on the couch that night, her body weak, her breath shallow. The doctors had said she had days left, maybe less. Outside, rain dripped down the windows like quiet tears. She had stopped answering the door weeks ago. But this time, something in her heart stirred. A strange calm. "Come in," she whispered. The door opened with a low creak, and in stepped a man dressed in black, tall, thin, and completely still. No scythe, no shadowed hood, just eyes that looked like they'd seen every sorrow in the world. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at her, then at the small lamp beside her bed. "I wasn't ready for company," Mara said softly, her voice almost breaking into a laugh. He smiled faintly, a human smile, quiet and sad. "I know," he said. His voice was low, deep, and warm. "I didn't expect to find you awake." She studied him. "You're not from the hospital, are you?" He shook his head slowly. "I'm from farther away." That made her laugh, just once, just enough to hurt. "So you're who I think you are." He nodded. "I'm sorry, Mara." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of rain. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She only looked at him, this stranger who wasn't a stranger at all, and said, "You're late." He tilted his head slightly. "Late?" "I've been waiting," she said. "I was ready last week, maybe even before that." The Reaper, for that's what he was, looked down at the floor. "I'm not always in control of the timing." "Neither am I," she whispered. He sat down across from her, folding his hands like a man afraid to break something fragile. "You're not what I expected," she said after a while. "What did you expect? A shadow? A monster? Maybe nothing at all?" He smiled again, just barely. "I've been called all those things." "But you look sad," she said. He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the window. "The rain," he murmured. "It sounds the same everywhere." Mara watched him carefully. "You sound tired." "I am," he said simply. "I've seen every goodbye, every last breath. It never gets easier." She hesitated. "Why do you do it, then?" "Because someone has to," he said. "And once I made a promise." "To who?" He looked at her, really looked, and something flickered behind his calm expression. "To someone I loved," he said quietly. "A long, long time ago." For the first time since her illness began, Mara didn't feel afraid. There was no cold hand, no sense of finality, just a strange warmth filling the room. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Does it hurt? Dying, I mean." He hesitated. "No, not for long. It's like falling asleep in a dream that finally makes sense." She nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "I like that." He stood then, his hand reaching toward her, not demanding, just waiting. Then, "Mara, it's time." But she didn't move. "Wait," she whispered. "Just one more minute." He lowered his hand. "One more minute," he agreed. She smiled weakly. "You really are kind." "I'm not," he said. "But you remind me of someone who once believed I could be." That minute stretched endlessly, soft breathing, quiet rain, time itself holding its breath. Then she looked up and said, "What was her name? The one you loved?" He blinked slowly. "Her name was Grace." Mara's eyes softened. "Did she die?" He nodded. "A long time ago. But every soul I meet, I look for her face." Mara smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why you came late," she whispered. "Because, for a moment, you thought you found her again." He didn't answer, but something in his eyes shimmered, not light, not tears, but memory. When he finally reached for her hand, she didn't resist. The warmth of it surprised her. She thought death would be cold. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. The rain slowed to a whisper. Mara exhaled softly, and somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, the room fell still. The Reaper stood alone, staring at her peaceful face. Then, almost tenderly, he whispered, "Sleep well, Grace." The house was quiet after Mara's last breath. The lamp hummed softly. The rain thinned to a mist. He stood beside her for a long time, not moving, not blinking, as if time itself had frozen around them. He had done this for centuries. Enter, listen, wait, guide, leave. Never stay. But he did not leave. He stared at her peaceful face and felt something he had trained himself to bury. Ache. Not sharp. Not wild. A slow ache that warmed and hurt at the same time, like pressing a palm to an old bruise. He whispered her name once more. Mara. Her body did not answer. Her soul had already slipped through the veil, light as breath on glass. He should have followed it, walked the path between and led her where all gentle souls must go. But he didn't. He stood there, breaking a rule no one had seen him break before. Because of a promise. Because of Grace. Long ago, before the weight of goodbyes bent his shoulders, he promised he would never feel. He promised he would be a bridge, not a person. No favorites. No delays. No wishes. He broke it the moment Mara asked for one more minute, and he said yes. He looked at the empty chair across from her as if someone still sat there. "Grace," he said into the quiet. "Was this how it felt when you left me? Did someone wait for you? Did someone break a rule?" A small clock on the wall ticked softly, then stopped. He sighed and reached out. With a touch, it began again. He moved through the room like a shadow touching memories. A photo on the bookshelf, Mara as a child, gap-toothed, grinning in sunlight. A note on the fridge, "Buy milk. Call Ruth. Remember to breathe." A scarf hanging from a chair, still holding the shape of her shoulders. There was love in this house, ordinary love, the kind that clings to small objects and refuses to let go. He closed his eyes, and the room breathed with him. He could still feel the echo of her last minute. The softness, the relief. He should go. He did not. Instead, he followed a thin thread, something only beings like him could sense. Where the soul had brushed the world on its way out, it left a trail. He could feel it drift down the hallway, touching a door, pausing on a handle. He opened it. A small room, a desk, a window where the rain drew little rivers. A notebook lay open on the desk, pages covered in careful writing. He leaned down, reading without his hands. "If I go soon, please let the last thing I say be soft. Please let me forgive the life I didn't get to live, and let whoever comes for me be gentle." He exhaled. It almost sounded like a prayer answered. He turned another page with a thought. More writing. More wishes. If there is someone on the other side, tell them I tried. Tell them I stayed brave on the days I wasn't. His throat tightened, though he had no need for air. He remembered a girl with wild hair and laughing eyes who once pressed a hand to his chest and said, "You feel, even if you pretend you don't." Grace. He closed the notebook and the rain quieted as if listening. He touched the window. The glass went warm beneath his palm. "You remind me of her," he told the empty room. "You made me late. You made me kind." A car door shut outside. Footsteps. A key scraping the lock. He stepped back into the living room as the door opened. A woman entered, holding flowers already wilting from the cold. Middle-aged. Tired eyes. The kind of face that had learned to fold grief into something soft. "Mara," she called, hopeful and afraid in the same breath. He stood very still. She could not see him unless he let her. Another rule. He did not speak. He only watched as she set the flowers down and crossed the room. When she saw the stillness in Mara's face, she went quiet. There was no scream, no collapse, only a slow and terrible understanding that reached every part of her. She touched Mara's hand. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "You waited for me, didn't you?" Her name was Ruth, the name from the fridge. Her shoulders shook. She did not cry loudly. She folded the grief inward, the way some people do when they've been strong too long. He wanted, for a strange moment, to make the room warmer, to stop the clock again, to give Ruth a minute too. But the rules are stubborn things. He had already broken one. He stepped closer and laid a mercy she would never know he gave. The memory of Mara laughing, one bright afternoon on a swing, the smell of cut grass, the taste of summer air. Ruth closed her eyes, and for one heartbeat, she smiled through tears. He turned to go at last. The veil stayed, waiting for him to take the path and meet the soul he'd delayed. But as he reached for it, something tugged. Not the veil, not a rule, a thread, a thin silver thread drifting from the open notebook down the hall, still tied to Mara's last words. It snared on his wrist like silk. He followed it to the desk again. This time he opened the drawer beneath. Inside sat an envelope with his name that she could not possibly have known. It said only, "To the man in black." He stayed at it for a long time. No one writes to death. No one knows how. He broke the seal. "If you are the one who comes for me, I want to say thank you for being kind. I dreamt of you last week. You stood in the rain and didn't take me yet. You waited while I finished a story. Please do one more thing. Bring this letter to Grace. She will be waiting by the tree with the white ribbon." He froze. He could feel the world tilt. Grace. A tree. A white ribbon. It was impossible. Grace had been gone for a lifetime of lifetimes. But the soul path hummed, bright as a bell. He closed his hand around the letter, and for the first time in centuries, his voice shook. "Mara," he whispered, "how do you know her name?" Outside, the rain stopped completely. In the silence, he heard a child's laugh from a memory that wasn't his, and a bell far away, as if someone were calling him home. He stepped toward the veil. "Grace," he said, almost a prayer, "if you are there, wait for me." And he crossed over, the letter against his heart, neither dark nor bright. It was made of stillness, like air caught between heartbeats. Every step he took stirred ripples of light through the ground beneath his feet, faint echoes of the lives he had touched. He had crossed this path thousands of times, yet this time felt different. The letter in his hand glowed softly, its edges warm against his palm. A letter meant for Grace. He hadn't heard that name in what mortals would call centuries. He had buried it deep, with the part of him that once laughed. He used to be human once, before the promise, before eternity turned him into something else. And now, a dying woman named Mara had spoken Grace's name as if it had never been forgotten. He walked until the path opened into a meadow. In the center stood a tree, tall and ancient, its branches heavy with white blossoms. And from one branch, a single white ribbon fluttered in the wind. The sight stopped him. He remembered this tree. He remembered standing beneath it long ago, holding a woman who smelled like rain and sunlight. He remembered her whispering, "If we ever lose each other, I'll wait here, by the tree with the white ribbon." That was before she fell sick, before he begged the stars to let him take her place, before they granted his wish in the cruelest way possible. He became what he is now, the one who comes for others so that no one else would come for her. That was the promise. He stepped closer, the ground humming softly under his feet. The ribbon danced in the wind, glowing faintly. "Grace," he whispered. No answer, only the wind, soft and endless. He unfolded Mara's letter again, tracing the handwriting. Her words glimmered faintly now, as if written in light. "If you are the one who comes for me, please bring this to Grace. She will understand what I saw." He frowned. "What you saw?" The words shifted before his eyes, rearranging themselves like smoke. "Tell her she was never forgotten." The letter dissolved into his hand, leaving a faint warmth behind. And then, behind him, a voice said softly. You took your time. He turned. She stood beneath the tree. Not a ghost. Not a spirit. Grace. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, but her eyes were exactly the same, gentle, steady, the color of morning after rain. She wore a white dress that fluttered lightly in the wind. She smiled, the same way she always used to when she caught him staring too long. Grace. His voice broke on her name. She tilted her head. You didn't think I'd wait forever. He stepped closer, afraid that if he blinked, she would vanish. I kept my promise, he said. I made sure no one else suffered like you did. Her smile softened, and in doing so, you forgot how to live. He stopped. I'm not alive. You are, she said gently. You just stopped believing it. He wanted to reach for her, but didn't dare. Mara, she told me about you. She said you'd be here. Grace nodded. I visited her. In her dreams. She was ready, but you weren't. So I asked her to give you the letter. He frowned. Why? Because you still didn't understand what death means, she said. It's not an ending. It's a returning. You've been guiding souls home for so long that you forgot you have one too. He felt something stir deep in his chest, a heartbeat he hadn't heard in ages. I wanted to save you, he whispered. And you did, she said. Her eyes glistened. You gave me peace, but you didn't give it to yourself. The wind caught the ribbon above them, spinning it gently. The blossoms fell like snow. He closed his eyes. I'm so tired, Grace. I know. She stepped forward, her hand brushing against his. He felt warmth for the first time in centuries. You don't have to carry them all, she said softly. Let them find their own way. Let yourself rest. He shook his head. If I stop, who will guide them? She smiled through tears. Someone always will. The world doesn't end when one heart rests. He looked at her, at the tree, at the ribbon that shimmered between them. Then what happens now? Grace's hand lingered over his chest. Now, she whispered, you forgive yourself. And before he could answer, she pressed her hand fully against his chest. And for the first time in eternity, he felt his own heartbeat. It was faint, uneven, beautiful. The ribbon above them loosened, floating down like a falling star. It brushed against his shoulder, and for a moment he could see the world through her eyes. The light, the rain, the endless sky. But when he opened his eyes again, she was gone. Only the ribbon remained, resting in his palm. He sank to his knees beneath the tree, clutching it. Grace, he whispered, don't go. The wind answered softly, carrying her voice through the leaves. I'm not gone. I'm home. And someday you will be too. He stayed there until the meadow faded, until the ribbon dimmed, until only silence was left. Then he stood, holding the ribbon close to his heart. A new path opened before him, one he'd never seen before. For the first time, he didn't know where it led. He took a step forward anyway. The wind carried him back to the living world. It wasn't a fall or a flight, more like a deep sigh that became air again. He opened his eyes to the sound of waves and the scent of salt. A shoreline stretched before him, endless gray water rolling against wet sand. He looked down at himself. The black coat, the hands that never aged. He was still the reaper, but something was different. The white ribbon Grace had left behind was tied around his wrist, soft as breath. And under his ribs, faint and impossible, was the rhythm of a heartbeat. He whispered to the sea, Grace, am I supposed to keep walking? The wind did not answer, but somewhere behind him, someone laughed, light, surprised, very much alive. He turned. A girl stood farther up the beach, barefoot, her jeans rolled to her knees, her hair a wild halo in the wind. She couldn't have been more than 17. She was drawing shapes in the sand with a stick, circles, wings, stars. She didn't see him at first. No one ever did unless he willed it. He began to turn away, and then she looked up and waved. Waved. He froze. Hey, she called out. You're early. He blinked. Early. She smiled. For me, I think. You're him, right? The one who comes when it's time. He took a slow step closer. You see me? Of course I do, she said as if it were obvious. You've been standing there for 10 minutes like a statue. You scared the gulls away. He wasn't sure how to respond. You shouldn't be able to see me, he murmured. The girl tilted her head. Why not? Maybe I'm special. Her smile wasn't afraid. It was curious, and for reasons he couldn't name, it made his chest ache. What's your name? He asked. Lila. She dropped the stick and dusted sand off her hands. What's yours? He hesitated. I don't have one anymore. She squinted at him, thinking. That sounds lonely. He almost smiled. It is. She nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. Well, if you don't have one, I'll just call you something. She looked him up and down, then said, You look like an Elliot. Elliot? Yeah, it suits you. He repeated the name quietly, tasting it. Elliot. It had been a long time since anyone had called him anything. Lila turned her eyes toward the sea. So, are you here to take me? He studied her carefully. Her soul shimmered faintly around her like heat above water, vibrant, alive. No, he said. It's not your time. She smiled, relieved. Good. I have things to do. He frowned slightly. If you can see me, something connects us. That shouldn't happen. She shrugged. Maybe the world got bored of rules. Her words made him laugh, a small, startled sound he hadn't made in 100 lifetimes. It felt strange and good. They walked along the water's edge. She talked about things that made no sense to him. School, music, coffee shops, a stray cat she fed every night. He listened, saying almost nothing, just memorizing the rhythm of her voice. It reminded him of something, of sunlight through curtains, of a world before endless goodbyes. When they reached the rocks, she sat and looked at him thoughtfully. Do you ever get tired? She asked. He paused. Yes. Then why do you keep going? Because stopping means breaking a promise. Must have been an important one. It was, he said softly. Lila hugged her knees. You know, you don't look like death. What does death look like? She pointed toward the horizon. Like the sun setting. Scary if you stare too long, but kind of beautiful too. He followed her gaze, the light catching the ribbon around his wrist. Maybe, he said. She smiled again. So, Elliot the Reaper, do you ever wish someone would come for you? The question startled him. No one had ever asked that. He looked at her, the fearless curiosity in her face, the gentle way she asked it, and for a second, he almost said yes. Almost. But before he could speak, she frowned and pressed a hand to her temple. The color drained from her cheeks. Lila, he said quickly. She shook her head as if dizzy. It's okay. Just a sharp pain. It happens sometimes. He reached for her instinctively. His hand brushed her shoulder, and for a split second, the world flickered. He saw flashes, a hospital room, a beeping monitor, her body lying still, a doctor's voice saying, She's slipping. Then the vision vanished. He stepped back, shaken. Lila. She blinked, unaware. What's wrong? He swallowed. You asked if I was Ailey. She nodded. Yeah. His voice was barely a whisper. Maybe I'm not. A gust of wind tore across the beach, scattering sand in spirals. The white ribbon on his wrist fluttered violently, glowing brighter than before. Lila didn't see it. She just stayed at him, puzzled by the sadness in his eyes. He looked at her, seeing now the faint shimmer around her dimming slightly. Her time wasn't supposed to come. But it was coming anyway. He clenched his fists. No, he whispered. Not again. The sea roared louder, waves crashing against the rocks as if echoing his defiance. He looked at her and made a choice he wasn't supposed to make. For the second time in his eternal existence, the Reaper broke a rule. He reached out and said, Then I won't take you. The moment he said it, Then I won't take you, the air changed. The ocean went still. The gulls froze mid-flight, and something deep in the unseen realm shifted. He had done the one thing death must never do. He chose mercy over fate. The ribbon around his wrist tightened, glowing like fire. He winced, feeling it burn into his skin, a reminder that every second from this point forward was borrowed, stolen from the natural flow of things. Lila tilted her head, noticing the light. What's happening? He hit his wrist. Nothing. Just wind. She smiled faintly. You're a bad liar, Elliot. He almost smiled back. Almost. But inside him, panic was building. Because now, for the first time since he became the Reaper, he didn't know what came next. They left the beach together as the sun dipped into the sea. Lila's house was small, perched on a hill above the shore, with fairy lights strung across the porch and a cat sleeping on the steps. It smelled like cinnamon and rain. Want tea? She asked, unlocking the door. He hesitated. I don't drink. Then sit, she said, smiling. You look like you could use pretending you do. He sat by the window while she busied herself in the kitchen. The light from the lamp painted everything in gold. It was the kind of warmth he hadn't felt in centuries, the kind that had nothing to do with heat and everything to do with being seen. When she handed him a mug, he held it carefully, watching the steam curl. It wasn't real warmth for him, but somehow it felt real enough. So, she said, settling opposite him, You're really… What? Death? The Reaper? Yes. And you're not here for me. He looked at her, his jaw tight. Not anymore. Lila frowned. That sounds dangerous. It is. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind outside and the ticking of a clock that somehow felt louder than time itself. Finally, she said softly, You know what's funny? I wasn't afraid when I saw you. I just felt calm, like I'd met you before. He met her eyes. Maybe you have. How would I forget that? He smiled faintly. Some memories aren't meant for this life. She leaned back in her chair, studying him. Then maybe we knew each other once. Before. He didn't answer, but her words unsettled something deep within him. Because when he looked at her, really looked, there was something hauntingly familiar. The shape of her smile, the light in her eyes, like Grace, but not Grace, like someone who carried a piece of her soul forward. That night, he didn't leave. He told himself it was to make sure she stayed alive, to guard her until morning. But when she fell asleep on the couch, curled beneath a blanket, he stayed because of something else, something he couldn't yet name. He stood by the window, the ribbon on his wrist pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Every pulse meant the same thing. Time was being rewritten. He could feel the pull from the other side, the voices of the keepers whispering warnings he couldn't quite hear. He ignored them. He looked at Lila, peaceful in her sleep, her chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. Mortals were so fragile, but in their fragility was something he envied. Every breath, every heartbeat meant something to them. To him, those things were long gone. Until now. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. The warmth of her life rushed through him like lightning. He could feel her pulse beneath her skin, and with it, the faint echo of his own. The ribbon flayed white-hot. He winced but didn't pull away. In the silence, a voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere at once. You can't save her. He turned sharply. Grace. The voice came again, gentler. You'll lose everything if you try. He clenched his fists. I already lost everything. Then why risk the little you have left? He glanced back at Lila. Because she doesn't deserve to die. Neither did I. The words hit him like a blade. He closed his eyes, pain rippling through him. Grace, he whispered, please, don't ask me to take her. Silence. Then the faint sound of laughter, her laughter, soft and bittersweet. You never did learn to let go. And then the voice faded. He stood there for hours until the night grew thin and the first light touched the horizon. The white ribbon, now dim again, hung heavy around his wrist, a reminder that every sunrise now came with a price. When Lila woke, she stretched and smiled at him. You're still here. He nodded. You should rest more. She grinned sleepily. Bossy much? He turned away to hide his smile. Elliot, she said softly. Yes. Thank you. I don't know why, but thank you for being here. He looked at her, and for a fleeting moment, the sun caught in her hair just the way it used to with Grace. He whispered back, You don't need to thank me. But deep down, he knew that saving her, even for a little while, meant defying the very order of life and death. And soon, something would come for them both. He looked at the ribbon again, glowing faintly against his pulse. Borrowed time. That's all they had now. And borrowed time always runs out. Time had always obeyed him. Until now. For centuries, it bent to his will. Every soul, every breath, every heartbeat followed the rhythm he kept. But since the moment he spared Lila, the world had begun to hesitate. Seconds dragged. Minutes twisted. Every clock he passed stuttered, unsure whether to tick or to stop. He felt it most at night, the weight of time pressing against him like a storm trying to break through glass. And each time he looked at Lila, fast asleep in her quiet house, that storm grew stronger. Because she was alive. Because she shouldn't be. Because he made her be. That morning, he stood outside her window and watched the sunlight reach her face. She stayed, smiling in her sleep, and whispered something. He leaned closer, though he knew she couldn't see him. Her lips moved again, one soft word. Grace. His heart twisted. The sound of that name coming from Lila's mouth sent a shiver through him, cold and familiar. It couldn't be coincidence. It couldn't. When she woke, he asked quietly, Do you dream often? Lately, yes, she said, rubbing her eyes. But they're weird. There's always a woman in white. She's standing by a tree with a ribbon. She keeps saying I'm not ready yet. He froze. A white ribbon. Yeah. Why? He smiled faintly, trying to hide the fear behind it. No reason. But inside, panic was spreading like cracks through glass. Grace was reaching out again, not to him this time, but to her. By afternoon, the world started breaking. It began small. The clock above her stove stopped. Then the one in the hall. Then the street lights flickered though it was still day. He could feel it happening, time unraveling itself thread by thread. Every second Lila lived past her destined end was pulling the world apart. He sat on the porch, staring at the sea, the ribbon around his wrist dimming with each pulse. He whispered to it, as if Grace could hear him through it. I can't lose her too. Not again. The wind blew softly, but this time it didn't comfort him. It howled, angry, warning. Lila came out with 2 cups of tea, one for her, one for him, though his always stayed untouched. You've been quiet, she said, sitting beside him. Just thinking. She watched him for a while. You look sad. He turned to her. Do you ever wonder why you can see me? Every day, she admitted. But if I asked, would you tell me the truth? He hesitated. Maybe not the one you want. Try me. He looked at her, really looked, and the truth trembled on his tongue. I was supposed to take you, Lila. She blinked. Take me? You mean? Yes. He couldn't say the word. She went still, her eyes filling with realization. But you didn't. He shook his head. Why? She whispered. He swallowed hard. Because you reminded me of someone. Someone I lost a long time ago. Lila's breath hitched. Grace. He looked up sharply. How do you? She touched her chest, tears glistening in her eyes. I don't know. I just feel her, like she's part of me somehow. The wind stilled, and for a brief second, the world went silent, too silent. Then came the sound, a deep, resonant chime echoing through the air. He stood immediately. No. What's happening? She asked, panicked. They found me. Who? The keepers, he said, voice low and broken. The ones who guard the balance between life and death. They know I've broken the promise. Lila grabbed his arm. Then run. He looked at her, shaking his head. You don't understand. There's nowhere to run from time itself. The sky dimmed. Clouds churned like ink in water. The air tasted like metal. From the horizon, a shimmer began. Not light, not shadow, something in between. It was coming closer. Lila clung to him. Elliot, what happens if they find you? He hesitated. Then they'll take me back. And me? His silence was the answer. She shook her head violently. No, no, you can't let them. He looked down at her, the ribbon on his wrist now burning so bright it hurt to look at. He cupped her face gently, memorizing her warmth, her trembling breath. If I go, he whispered, you must keep living, no matter what happens. Her tears spilled over. Don't talk like that. I mean it. Promise me. She tried to smile through the tears. You're terrible at goodbyes. He laughed softly. I never learned how. She leaned into his touch. Then don't say goodbye. Stay. The egg cracked. The shimmer reached the hill. Voices like thunder rolled across the sky. Elliot of the Vale, they called. Return what you have stolen. He turned toward them, the wind tearing through his coat. She's not stolen. She's alive. You were never meant to choose. You were meant to guide, not love. He shouted into the storm. Then let me learn what love costs. The ground trembled. Lightning split the air, but it was soundless, as if the world itself held its breath. Lila clung to him, terrified. Please, Elliot. He turned back to her, his eyes glowing faintly now. Whatever happens, don't let go. She nodded, gripping his coat. And as the light from the keepers surrounded them, swallowing everything in blinding white, he whispered his final defiance. Then I'll stop the clock myself. And just like that, time shattered. The world froze. The sea stopped mid-wave. The light hung still in the air. Only two hearts kept beating, his and hers, inside a world that no longer moved. Silence, the kind that doesn't come from peace, but from everything being too still. No waves, no wind. Even the gulls above the frozen sea hung motionless, wings caught mid-flap. Elliot and Lila stood in the center of a world that had forgotten how to move. Only two things still beat, their hearts. One borrowed, one forbidden. Lila's hand trembled in his. What did you do? He looked around, the sky painted in frozen lightning. I stopped time. You can do that, she whispered. I shouldn't be able to. He looked down at the ribbon on his wrist. The white one Grace had left him. It was fraying now, threads unraveling, light leaking from it like dying stars. Every second it burned meant one thing. His essence was unraveling too. He had bought them a few moments in eternity, but he knew the price. When time started again, one of them wouldn't be part of it. They began to walk. Each step sounded like echoes in glass. No air stirred. The waves were statues of silver. The clouds cracked into frozen rivers of light. Lila looked around in awe. It's beautiful, she whispered, like we're inside a photograph. It's wrong, he said softly. The world isn't meant to hold its breath this long. Then why save me, she asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't, because every answer led back to a face that wasn't hers. Grace, smiling beneath a white tree. Grace, whispering, if you love someone, let them go. But he hadn't let go, not of Grace, not of Mara, not of the promise. And now he couldn't let go of Lila either. They reached the town at the edge of the coast. Everything was still. Cars hung inches above the road, caught in motion. A child's balloon floated midday, bright against the gray. Inside the cafe window, a couple sat frozen mid-laugh, coffee steam trapped like crystal between them. Lila pressed a hand to the glass. They're all stuck. Elliot nodded. Their time is paused. Every soul, every heart. Except ours. Can you fix it? Yes, he said. But if I do? She turned to him. What happens? He hesitated. Then the balance returns. And so does death. Her eyes widened. You mean? Yes. He looked at her, voice breaking. You'll have to go. She shook her head. No, no. Elliot, there has to be another way. There isn't. He reached for her hands. When I stopped time, I took the whole world hostage. The keepers will not forgive that. I don't care about them, she cried. Her voice cracked. I just started to live again. He touched her cheek gently. And that's why you have to go. You deserve to finish your story, even if it's not in this life. Tears gathered in her eyes. I don't want to leave you. He smiled weakly. That's what she said too. She frowned. Who? Grace. Lila's breath caught. The windless air shimmered faintly, and for the briefest moment, she saw it. The tree, the white ribbon, and a woman standing beneath it, watching with kind, sorrowful eyes. I see her, Lila whispered. Elliot turned sharply. You see her? Lila nodded slowly, eyes wide with tears. She looks like me. He stepped closer. You are not her, Lila. But even as he said it, he could feel the truth humming in his bones. The same light, the same softness, the same soul, reborn, reshaped, but hers all the same. Grace had returned, and he was breaking the universe just to keep her here. A sound began to rise through the stillness, low, deep, like the groaning of a giant clock waking from a dream. Cracks of gold light spread through the air. Time was fighting back. Lila gripped his arm. Elliot. He pulled her close, holding her against him as the air fractured around them. I can't stop it much longer, he said. She looked up at him, trembling. Then don't. Don't destroy yourself for me. He shook his head. You don't understand. Without you, I'm just a shadow pretending to have a heart. You made me feel again. Her tears fell freely now, shining like small stars as they froze midi. She reached up, touching his face. Then feel this, just this moment. He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to hers. Everything else fell away, the cracking sky, the shattering time, the collapsing eternity. There was only her warmth, her breath, her heartbeat echoing through him. The ribbon around his wrist split in half. One half turned black and fell to the ground. The other half wrapped around Lila's hand and began to glow. The world shuddered. The frozen waves began to move. The birds started to fall back into flight, and the clock of creation began to tick again. Lila gasped, her light growing brighter. Elliot, what's happening? He opened his eyes, voice trembling. Time is choosing. The light engulfed them both. When it faded, the world moved once more. The waves crashed. The wind howled. Life resumed. But Elliot was gone. Only a white ribbon remained on the sand, tied gently around Lila's wrist. She fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching the ribbon. The sea whispered his name over and over, carrying it into the horizon. Elliot. Far beyond the veil, a figure walked through the meadow where time never reached. The blossoms of the white tree swayed gently in the wind. Grace stood waiting beneath it, smiling softly. And beside her now walked Elliot, quiet, whole, and finally at peace. He looked back toward the living world one last time and whispered, Thank you for teaching me how to live. Grace reached for his hand, and together they walked beneath the tree as the light closed around them. The ocean never stopped whispering. It carried his name like a secret it wasn't meant to keep. Sometimes the tide brought it softly, like breath between waves. Sometimes it thundered it so loud that she woke, heart racing, convinced he was standing by her door. Elliot. She would whisper his name back, but the room always stayed empty. The world had healed itself. People smiled again, unaware that time had once stopped. The gulls screamed, the market filled with laughter, and life went on with that easy forgetfulness only humans seem to have. But Lila remembered. Not with her mind. Those memories were fading like old film. But her heart knew. Every morning when she looked at the sea, her chest tightened, as if a part of her still waited for something, or someone, to return. The ribbon on her wrist was the only proof. White, frayed, yet still faintly warm. Sometimes, when the sunlight hit it, it shimmered like breath. Her mother worried about her. You keep drifting off, sweetheart, she said one morning over breakfast. Ever since, you know, the hospital. Lila forced a smile. I'm fine, Mom. You sure you don't want to see someone? You've been talking in your sleep. What do I say? Her mother hesitated. Mostly a name. Elliot. Lila froze. Her spoon clinked against the bowl. She tried to sound casual. Probably just a dream. Her mother nodded slowly, not convinced. Just promise me you're okay. I'm okay, Lila lied. But she wasn't, because she could still feel him. Sometimes she'd be walking home and the street light above her would flicker once, just once, and she'd feel warmth on her shoulder, like someone brushing past her. Or she'd catch her reflection in a shop window and swear she saw another figure standing just behind her, tall, quiet, with a faint, sad smile. It didn't scare her. It comforted her. One evening, she sat by the water with a notebook in her lap. The sky was the color of fading fire. She started to draw, not thinking, just letting her hand move. When she looked down, her breath caught. She had drawn a man in black, standing in the rain, a ribbon tied around his wrist. Her eyes stung. I don't remember your face, she whispered, but I remember your heart. The sea breeze lifted the page. It fluttered free and rolled down the sand toward the waves. Before she could chase it, a soft gust of wind changed direction and sent it back toward her, resting perfectly at her feet. She smiled through her tears. You still can't let me go, can you? That night, she dreamed again. She was standing in a vast meadow under a sky full of soft silver light. In front of her stood a familiar tree. Its blossoms were white as snow, and tied to one low branch was a single new ribbon, hers. She walked closer. The grass shimmered with every step. Under the tree stood two figures, a woman in white, and a man she would have known anyway. Elliot, she breathed. He turned, smiling gently. You remember? Her throat tightened. I thought you were gone. I am, he said softly, but not from you. Grace stepped closer, her eyes full of the same warmth that once lived in Lila's own. She reached out and touched the ribbon on Lila's wrist. You carried him here, Grace said, just like I once carried him with me. Lila blinked back tears. Why me? Why us? Grace smiled sadly. Because love isn't meant to end. It moves, it changes, it finds new hearts to live in. Elliot nodded. You are the reason I found peace, Lila. You made me remember what it felt like to live, to choose mercy, even when it broke the rules. Lila stepped closer. Then why can't you stay? He looked down at his hand. It was beginning to fade, his outline blurring into the soft light. Because the world needs balance. My time is done. But yours has only begun. Her tears fell freely now. I miss you. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, warmth meeting warmth for the briefest second. Then live enough for both of us. The meadow began to dissolve, the white petals swirling around her like snow. Grace took Elliot's hand, her other resting briefly on Lila's shoulder. You'll see us again, she said, but not until your story is done. Lila looked at them both, smiling through her tears. Then promise me one thing. Elliot tilted his head. Anything. Wait for me, she whispered. Grace smiled. We will. Lila woke up with tears on her pillow and sunlight on her face. The ribbon on her wrist shimmered once and tightened gently, as if being tied by an unseen hand. And when she looked out the window, the sea sparkled brighter than ever, as if someone out there, beyond the horizon, was smiling back. She whispered, until the clock stops again. The wind answered softly, carrying a voice only she could hear. Always. The days grew quieter after that dream, but the world around Lila began to behave differently. Clocks stuttered for a heartbeat when she entered a room. The second hand of her watch paused sometimes, not broken, just waiting. And when she walked through the market or along the shore, the air shimmered faintly, like it was bending around her. It didn't frighten her. It felt familiar, like a memory she wasn't supposed to have. The ribbon on her wrist had changed too. It used to be pure white, soft and ghostly. Now faint silver threads glimmered through it, glowing softly at night. Whenever she touched it, warmth bloomed under her skin, the same warmth she felt when Elliot's hand brushed Hayes in the meadow. One morning, as she crossed the cafe courtyard, a man stumbled off the curb in front of her, tripping into traffic. Without thinking, Lila gasped and reached out. The world froze. The cars, mid-motion, hovered inches from the man's leg. Birds were suspended in air. The sound of the city, a hum that never stopped, vanished. It was only her heartbeat that she could hear. Lila's hand trembled. "No," she whispered. "This isn't real." But the air felt thick, like honey, and the silver ribbon pulsed with light. She stepped forward, took the man's arm, and pulled him to the sidewalk. The moment her hand let go, the world roared back to life. Engines blared, tires screeched, but the man was safe. He turned to her, dazed, unaware of what had just happened. "Thank you," he breathed. Lila stayed, her voice barely there. You didn't see that." "See what?" He smiled shakily. "I just lost my balance. Lucky you were here." "Lucky? No, guided." As he walked away, Lila looked down at her wrist. The ribbon shimmered faintly, then dimmed, as if satisfied. That night, she sat by the window with the ribbon resting in her palm. "Elliot," she whispered into the quiet, "what did you do to me?" The wind answered, soft, sad, and tender. The candle flame on her desk flickered, stretching long shadows across the wall. In that brief dance of light, she saw his silhouette, faint but there. "You asked me to wait," the voice murmured, low and calm. "But waiting is cruel when you still need saving." Her throat tightened. "You said it was over, that you were gone. Part of me is, but part of me lives in you." She swallowed hard, staring at the faint silver glow. "This power, it's yours, isn't it?" "No, it's ours. The Reaper's gift doesn't die. It transfers to those whose hearts were brave enough to love through death." Lila's breath shook. "I'm not a Reaper." "Not yet," the voice whispered. "But time is watching. It will call you when it's ready." The candle snuffed itself out. Darkness, then silence. Over the next few weeks, strange moments began to follow her everywhere. A clock tower struck 13 times instead of 12 when she passed. A child fell from a bicycle, and before he hit the ground, everything paused, just long enough for Lila to catch him. Each time, her ribbon glowed brighter. Each time, her pulse synced with something deeper, something beyond life. She began to understand Elliot's promise hadn't been just words. It was a seed planted inside her, and it was growing. But peace doesn't last. Not when the balance of life and death begins to tilt. One stormy night, as rain lashed the windows, Lila woke to the sound of whispers, dozens of them, surrounding her. The room was filled with gray mist, cold and shimmering. Figures moved in it, faint outlines of faces and hands reaching toward her. He broke the rule. The Reaper's line was not meant to live. The balance must be restored. Lila pressed back against the wall, heart hammering. "Who are you?" "Keepers," a voice hissed. "Guardians of the divide. You were touched by death and lived. You carry his mark." She looked down, the ribbon on her wrist blazed now, silver light spilling across the room. "I didn't ask for this," she cried. "Nor did he," the voices whispered. "Yet choices have consequences." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating a tall, shadowed figure standing in the doorway. His eyes gleamed white, his voice calm and terrible. "The girl who remembers, and the Reaper who disobeyed." Lila's breath caught. "Elliot." But it wasn't him. The man stepped forward, his cloak rippling like smoke. "I am not your Elliot," he said. "I am the one who came before him, and you, girl, carry the sin of mercy he left behind." The wind howled, rattling the glass. "When love defies death," he said softly, "something must die in its place." And before Lila could move, the ribbon on her wrist began to tighten, glowing brighter, cutting into her skin. She screamed. The Keeper's shadow loomed closer. "Return what was stolen," he said, voice like thunder, "or the balance will claim you both." The world tilted, light and dark folding together like waves collapsing. And as everything fell into silence again, she heard a single whisper through the storm. "Run." Elliot's voice. The world was breaking apart around her. Lila ran through the storm, her lungs burning, the silver ribbon still glowing violently against her wrist. The sky above cracked with light, not lightning, but raw, splitting energy that tore through clouds like shattered glass. Everywhere she turned, the shadows followed. The keepers. They moved like smoke, whispering her name through the wind, their voices a blend of warning and hunger. You cannot run from balance. You cannot keep what was taken. I didn't take anything, she screamed, stumbling through the sand. I didn't ask for this. But the ribbon burned brighter, wrapping around her fingers, glowing like it had a heartbeat of its own. Then, silence. The storm stopped. The waves froze mid-crash. Even her breath felt suspended. From the stillness, a voice whispered, low and pained. Lila. Her knees gave out. Elliot. He stepped out of the mist. The same dark coat. The same calm eyes. But this time, something in him was different, fractured. His outline flickered like broken glass catching the light. She ran to him, tears spilling before she even reached him. You came back. He smiled weakly. I told you I would. She reached out, her hands passed through him. Cold. Empty. No, she whispered. You're fading. I'm not supposed to be here. His voice trembled, barely holding itself together. Every second I stay, the world tilts further out of balance. The keepers will destroy everything, even you. Then let them, she cried. I don't care about balance. I just want you. Elliot stepped closer, his gaze soft but sad. You can't save me, Lila. But you can save yourself. You're the one the world chose. The world didn't choose me, she said through her tears. You did. He smiled faintly. And that's the problem. The air trembled again. The keepers appeared, circling them like storm clouds taking shape. Their leader, tall, cloaked in black, raised a hand, and the ground beneath Lila cracked with white light. Reaper, he thundered, you defied the law. You passed your gift to the living. You upset the order. Elliot's voice deepened, echoing with power. I gave life where death demanded it. I chose mercy. Then pay the price. The keepers lunged. Lila screamed as Elliot raised his hand. Time shattered around them. The sea froze mid-wave. The air became glass. Only their voices remained, echoing softly through the stillness. Lila, Elliot whispered, falling to one knee. His form was breaking apart now, dissolving into silver dust. Listen to me. You have to let me go. She shook her head violently, clutching his fading hand. No, you said you'd wait for me. I will, he breathed. But not here. Not now. The ribbon on her wrist pulsed, glowing so bright it hurt to look at. Elliot placed his hand over it. This was never meant to trap you, Lila. It was meant to guide you, to remind you that love doesn't end, even when time does. Her tears fell onto his hand, scattering into the light. Please, please don't leave me again. He smiled, that same warm, tired smile that had once stopped death itself. Then promise me you'll live. Promise me you'll see the world laugh, love, fall, and rise again. Promise me you'll finish what I couldn't. The keepers closed in, their shadows stretching over them like the tide. I promise, she whispered, her voice shaking. I'll live enough for both of us. Elliot nodded, his voice breaking. Then I can rest. He leaned forward, his lips brushing her forehead, a kiss made of light. The moment he touched her, the ribbon flared once, then unwound from her wrist, floating upward like smoke. It drifted into his chest, becoming one with the silver mist that now surrounded him. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the storm collapsed. The keepers' voices rose in unison, a haunting chorus that faded as quickly as it began. Elliot's form shimmered, turning to light, then fading into the rain. Goodbye, my heart, his voice whispered, until the world stops turning. And he was gone. When Lila opened her eyes, she was lying on the beach again. The ocean was calm. The sun was rising. She looked at her wrist, bare. The ribbon was gone. But when she touched her skin, she felt warmth. A faint heartbeat that wasn't her own. In the waves, she saw his reflection, smiling, proud. at peace. She whispered, "I'll keep your promise." And somewhere deep beyond the horizon, time itself sighed, not with sorrow, but with relief. Years passed. Lila grew older. She traveled. She painted. She loved again, quietly and deeply. But sometimes, when the air was still and the moonlight touched the water just right, she'd feel a presence beside her, a warmth brushing her hair back, a whisper through the wind. "You lived well." And she'd smile, tears glimmering under the stars. "I kept my promise." The sea would shimmer faintly, and for just a moment she could almost see him standing there again, a figure made of light and memory, watching her with pride. They say that when a person dies, a silver ribbon appears around their wrist, unseen by most, but shining to those who still believe. Some say it's just light. Some say it's love. But those who know the truth call it by another name.
Thank you so much for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps me keep telling stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that we're never truly alone. This is I Told Stories. Stories from the heart. Stories for the soul.